Welcome to Beer and Iron's Stack and Bake No-Boil Lasagna recipe baked in a camp cast iron Dutch oven. Boiling noodles in camp can be done, but what a hassle. When I discovered No-Boil Lasagna Noodles, I put cooking lasagna in camp on my cooking to-do list. We're going to brown our meat and let it drain. Mix our sauce up, and then stack and bake this lasagna recipe. It's gonna be meaty, cheesy, and noodly. But I ain't sure noodly is a word. What the heck? We're cooking and drinking beer. We're going with noodly. It's raining today. Well, not like a Louisiana rain. Most from the South would call this a sprinkle. Yes, you can cook in a camp cast iron Dutch oven when the weather is less than favorable. I used 2 Dutch ovens for this recipe, one to cook in and one smaller one like this 10-inch Dutch oven to keep my brown meat covered and to let it drain a bit. A second Dutch oven is not necessary, but you will need a second receptacle of some sort for holding on to the meat while we stack this recipe later. My suggestion is to use a deep 12-inch camp cast iron Dutch oven for this recipe. The extra depth will keep the heat farther from the top of this dish, and that'll keep the pasta from drying out before the rest of the recipe cooks. Let's cover the ingredients. 1 pound of a mild Italian sausage. 1 pound of a leaner ground beef. Our fat and flavor will come from many other sources. We'll need 20 no-boil lasagna noodles. Not all no-boil lasagna noodles are created equally, I have discovered over my time in creating this recipe. My suggestion is to find a brand and stick with that brand every time you create this recipe. That way you'll know if you need to add or take away some of the liquid based upon the final dish. Was it a bit dry? Was it a bit soupy? Was it perfect? We'll discuss this more in a bit. Most 16-ounce boxes have 20 and more noodles. 32 ounces of ricotta cheese. Yep, 32 ounces. 24 ounces, give or take, of an awesome pasta sauce of your choice. 1 can of diced or chopped fire-roasted tomatoes. This is going to be optional, and we're going to talk about this in a bit as well. 2 eggs. Pack more. Not all eggs will survive the trip to camp. 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning. 1 teaspoon of salt. A half to a full cup of finely chopped parsley. Chef tip here. Chop this stuff at home and bring it ready to go. It'll keep just fine. 12 ounces of a good, easy drinking beer. Go with a lager or other low IBU variety. Not too bitter and not too sweet. Later for the topping, we'll need 2 cups of shredded cheese. I usually start my fire after everything is prepped and ready, so I'm not racing that fire. But the prep work is pretty minimal. I'm going to go ahead and start my fire. After your fire started, create the cheese sauce. In a bowl, dump the 32 ounces of ricotta cheese. Then add the 2 eggs. Add the 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning. Toss in 1 teaspoon of salt. Before you add the beer, add the pasta sauce. Add half of the beer to the empty pasta sauce jar or can. This way we can wash out all that goodness that's still in that jar or can. Then add the rest of the beer. A word on the diced tomatoes. This is where you'll add either all the can's contents, drain the tomatoes, or just omit the fire-roasted tomatoes altogether. This will be up to you in the future based upon your first lasagna's consistency, and that will depend on the brand of pasta you are using. I like my dish to come out slightly on the soupy side. It balances out very well as the dish rests. It may be a bit soupy at first, and then it'll dry up just in time for seconds or leftovers. Add a cup of diced or chopped parsley. Blend the mixture very well. Make sure all of the ricotta cheese lumps are blended in well. I'm going to use a bit of parchment paper to prepare my meat. A cutting board will work as a good surface to keep that paper off the not-so-clean table. I'm going to use my fajita skillet to prepare the shape of the meat. Bear with me. You'll appreciate this meat prepping method. First, the sausage. Smooth out the sausage into a very large patty, nice and flat and smooth. On top of that sausage, lay out your ground beef. We're making one large meat patty with both pounds of meat in 2 layers. Don't blend the 2 meats together. Leave them in layers. Once the meat patty is prepared with the beef on top, we'll flip the patty to have the sausage on the top. Just like this. Hang on, I'm going to show you why I do this in a bit. Back to check on the fire. The coals are looking good. The problem with no-boil lasagna noodles is they're rectangular. The Dutch oven is round. Yeah, they make square Dutches, but for the majority of us, we're going to use our round 12-inch deep camp cast iron Dutch oven. Here's a chef's tip. Break them dudes in half. You'll end up with 40 halves. They'll fit better. Just you wait and see. Take your time here. They'll fragment with shards. That's okay. In the final dish, no one but you will ever know. Trust me. Only break 4 or 5 at a time. We have our meat patty ready, our noodles are all broken, and our cheese sauce is mixed up and at the ready. Let's cook. First, preheat the camp cast iron Dutch oven to a wicked hot temperature. Remember our meat patty, the sausage is on top. When we flip it down, the sausage will be on the bottom again. Sear the sausage side first. The sausage is going to provide the cooking oil for our beef when we flip this patty over. Place the meat patty, sausage side down, in the hot pot. Don't use any oil with this step, but it's perfectly okay to do so if you feel it to be necessary. Lay the patty in that hot pot and let it sear and brown on that one side. Now is as good a time as any to break open a nice cold porter. This one from Deschutes Brewery is delectable. It's an imperial and definitely a sipper if there ever was one. Black as midnight, black as pitch, blacker than the foulest witch. You all are my people. I'm sure you got that reference. Once the sausage side is browned and seared, use a wok shovel or other spatula-like utensil and flip the patty onto the beef side. Let the beef brown and sear. After the beef has browned, use a meat chopper or spatula to break up the patty into small bits and chunks. Let the meat brown just a bit more. It's not essential that the meat is cooked thoroughly. We'll be baking this meat as an ingredient with the rest of our ingredients. The goal in pre-searing the meat is to caramelize and to create flavor, as well as to render some of the fat and allow the excess grease to be removed from the sausage. What fat goes in this pot will stay in this pot. Line the second Dutch oven or other bowl or receptacle with a thick pad of paper towels. Use the wok shovel and another spatula to carefully scoop out the meat and store it in the second Dutch oven. If you're enjoying this video, give old Soulé a thumbs up. Click on that subscribe button and give a bit of a ring on that little ding-dong thingamajig. Now it's time to stack and bake this dish. The 12-inch Dutch oven is just off the fire and still very hot. I've laid out a barrier on the table to lay my Dutch oven lid to set the hot cast iron Dutch oven's legs. This will protect the table from possible damage my hot cast iron Dutch oven's legs may cause. It's inevitable that you're going to forget something when you're out and about and cooking in the great big outdoors. I don't have my measuring cup, but I'm going to use this can from my stewed tomatoes to measure out my cheese sauce. Plus, this will be fewer dishes to wash. A 14 to 15 ounce can is just under 2 cups. As liquid volume goes, we have about 10 or 11 cups of liquid in that cheese sauce that we created. Try to stack the layers on as level surface as possible. I used an old soggy little black piece of bark to level off my pot a bit. Layer 1. Add 2 cups of cheese sauce to the bottom of the Dutch oven. This will keep the first layer of pasta from sticking to the bottom of the Camp Cast Iron Dutch oven. Then, top with 10 pasta halves. Watch carefully how I arrange them. The broke side will likely be more rounded than the other side. Use that side, the broke side, against the wall of the Camp Cast Iron Dutch oven. Add 4 halves across from each other. Cover up those 4 corners there. And then center with the last 2 halves. Perfect. The next 3 layers are exactly the same. Sauce, meat, pasta. Add the 2 cups of sauce. Add 1/3 of the meat mixture, 1/3. Then top with 10 pasta halves. Layer 3. 2 more cups of cheese sauce. 1/3 more of the meat mixture. And 10 pasta halves. Layer 4, again, with 2 cups of cheese sauce. The last of the meat mixture. And the last 10 pasta halves. Layer 5. Now pour all of the remaining cheese sauce for the last layer. We're going to top this all with shredded cheese later, but not right now. Put the lid back on the pot. I'm going to dry off my lid to make sure I don't kill my heat right out of the gate. We'll be baking this dish at a goal temperature of 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius. Using the Time 2 guidelines, we'll take the diameter of our pot, 12 inches, and multiply that by 2. You'll get 24. Take 2/3 of the briquettes, 16, and place them on the top. Place 1/3 of the briquettes, 8, under the Dutch oven. This is a 45-minute to a 1-hour long bake. It's wet and raining out. We'll definitely have to cycle our briquettes mid-cook. I'm going to prepare a new batch of briquettes right now so they're ready when I need them. Plus, it's kind of cold out. I'll enjoy the extra heat. If you want to know more about heating the camp cast iron Dutch oven, follow the link in the description. Now get that windscreen set. Let the magic happen for the next 15 minutes. To learn more about the license plate windscreen, follow the link in the description. I'm going to sit here, keep warm, and enjoy my pipe while I drink my beer. After the meal has been cooking for the first 15 minutes, give the pot a turn. Turn the lid 1/3 of a turn in one direction. And then turn the whole pot 1/3 of a turn in another direction. It's sprinkling a bit more now. Gonna don my old rain gear and keep on cooking. It's as good a time as any to get the cheese shredded up as well. Prepare 2 cups of shredded cheese. Any cheese you prefer is a good cheese to use. When the next 15 minutes passes, and 30 minutes total, pull the pot from the heat and set some new briquettes to the base. Set enough of the new ones with the old ones to equal what 8 briquettes would be originally. Your best judgment will be a-okay here. Don't overthink this. Remove the lid from the Dutch oven and set it aside. Cover the dish with 2 cups of shredded cheddar cheese and replace the lid to the Dutch oven. On the lid, add enough new briquettes along with the old briquettes to equal what 16 fresh briquettes would look like. When adding new briquettes, it's perfectly okay to remove all the old and add only new. It's up to you. Let the dish bake for another 15 minutes. I'm going to add my little skillet here to heat it up and dry it off. After another 15 minutes passes, 45 minutes total, it's time to check our lasagna and see if it's time to eat. There's going to be a bit of liquid along the edges and it will be bubbling just a bit. I'm going to check the temperature here. It's not so much I need to check it for a safe cooking temperature. I also want to check to make sure it's up to a palate-pleasing temperature at about 165 degrees Fahrenheit or 75 degrees Celsius. And this is important, to see if my pasta is cooked. If you feel that thermometer probe or something similar like a knife or fork does not go through that pasta very easily, let the meal cook for another 15 minutes. That's where the bubbling liquid and slightly soupy consistency will pay off. Better to have the meal a bit soupy with nice soft noodles than chewy noodles. Trust me. When you serve this meal, expect a bit of extra liquid in the pot. That's okay. It usually reduces even more as the dish rests, but I ain't gonna let it rest. I'm hungry now. As a side note, the sauce was one of the hardest things to develop. I wanted to simplify the stacking process, and I needed the moisture to be just perfect to make sure the noodles were fully cooked when serving this meal. But not all no-boil noodles are created equally. I've noticed that sometimes the dish comes out drier than other times depending on the brand of noodles I use. If you find your dish coming out too soupy, my suggestion is to drain the fire-roasted tomatoes before adding them or just omit them altogether. Y'all, this can be an initially challenging recipe, but it's going to be a very rewarding one. I'd suggest a trial cook of this recipe before you cook this dish for other folks. Once you get the hang of it, you'll find it to be a very easy dish to make again and again, because again and again is how often folks are going to ask you to cook it. And that's it. Stack and bake lasagna in a camp cast iron Dutch oven. If you've enjoyed this video, poor old Sule would love a thumbs up. Click on that subscribe button and give a bit of a ring on that dinner bell. Y'all keep on cooking in those black beauties and enjoying those frosted glasses of that fermented barley pop. We're going to see you next time on beerandiron.com.